The Browns went over the Dolphins should have been a celebration. Instead, it sparked a full-blown identity crisis. Whispers from inside the front office say Jimmy Haslam didn't just attend the game. He left a message for Kevin Stefanski. It's time. That message? Let Shedeur Sanders play. But Stefanski didn't. He stuck with Dillon Gabriel, even with the scoreboard screaming for a change. Behind that choice lies a story of conflicting loyalties, media anxiety, and a franchise that spent years trying to avoid the spotlight now being swallowed by it.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
When the Patriots arrive in Cleveland, this story enters its next chapter. If Sanders doesn't play, again, the message becomes even clearer. The Browns are more afraid of the attention than committed to the future. But eventually, fear loses to inevitability. And for a team that's tried to silence the noise, every decision now only turns the volume up louder. The Browns blew out the Dolphins 31-6, but nobody cared. The crowd wasn't cheering for the scoreboard. They were chanting for the backup, and not just any backup, Shedeur Sanders. The stadium wasn't celebrating a statement win. It was demanding a quarterback change. And when Kevin Stefanski refused to put Sanders in during a fourth quarter that was already garbage time, the silence from the sideline said more than any stat line could. It told the world that this team isn't ready. Not for the pressure, not for the shift, not for the fallout. And now, with Jimmy Haslam reportedly stepping in to force the issue ahead of their next game against the Patriots, the whole thing has exploded. What should have been a quiet development story about grooming a young quarterback has morphed into a full-blown power struggle inside the Browns organization. This isn't just about football anymore. This is about politics, ego, image control, and the absolute fear of what might happen if Shedeur actually plays. Let's not kid ourselves. This didn't come out of nowhere. The second the Browns signed Sanders, they invited the circus. He's not just a second-string quarterback. He's a name, a headline, the son of Coach Prime, a walking PR event. And now, instead of managing the situation like professionals, the Browns are flailing. Stefanski says he didn't want to disrespect Dillon Gabriel by benching him during a rout. But that logic is thin. Gabriel played well enough. Sure. But when you're up by 4 touchdowns with fans screaming for your backup, giving him 2 series doesn't signal disrespect. It signals readiness. It signals vision. Instead, the team chose fear. They're scared of the media. They're scared of locker room dynamics. They're scared of what it says to the rest of the league if their golden boy backup outshines their current starter. And more than anything, they're scared of losing control of the narrative. But here's the problem. They already lost it. The fact that fans were chanting for Shedeur during a win, that tells you everything. They don't care about stability or chemistry. They care about momentum, excitement, and most importantly, they care about seeing the future, even if it means creating a little chaos in the process. And now, that chaos is in the front office, because when Haslam reportedly stepped in and pressured Stefanski to play Sanders in the next game, he did more than just shake up the quarterback room. He put Stefanski in a no-win situation. If Stefanski plays Sanders, it looks like he's caving to ownership. If he doesn't, he's defying the man who signs his checks. Either way, the coach loses credibility, either with the locker room, the fans, or the front office. This is where the Browns are now, frozen between 2 options, both loaded with risk. Play Sanders, and you risk unleashing the media circus the team claims to fear. Keep him on the bench, and you risk a fan revolt and a divided locker room. And the next game, against the Patriots of all teams, is the flashpoint. This is no longer about easing Sanders into the NFL. That ship sailed the moment Stefanski passed on playing him in a blowout. Now, whenever Sanders steps on the field, it's a moment. There's no low-pressure option left. The team turned a manageable situation into a pressure cooker. And make no mistake, the pressure is real. Haslam's intervention only confirms what we already knew, that this is about more than football. It's about optics, the marketability of Sanders, the business side of quarterbacking. And in 2025, that matters just as much as what happens between the lines. Shedeur isn't just a potential starter. He's a brand asset, a future star with national relevance. And Haslam wants to capitalize now. The blowout against Miami should have been the moment, but instead they hesitated. And now, the Patriots game is going to be the test. If Gabriel falters even a little, the calls for Sanders will hit a fever pitch. If Sanders doesn't play again, the fan base won't just be frustrated. They'll be furious. At Stefanski, at the franchise, at everything. And the worst part? It's all self-inflicted. The Browns tried to suppress the Sanders storyline. They thought if they ignored the noise, it would die down. But what they didn't realize is that in 2025, media silence is fuel. The longer they kept Shedeur benched, the louder the speculation became. And now, the Browns aren't managing a team, they're managing crisis. Internally, the fear is obvious. The coaching staff doesn't want to upend a good thing. They're winning games. The locker room is stable. For now, and they know what happens if Sanders comes in and plays well. The entire foundation gets shaken. But here's the kicker. If he comes in and doesn't play well, the circus might be even worse. And that's the real reason they've hesitated. They're not just afraid of what success looks like. They're afraid of failure. 2, of letting Sanders debut under all this pressure and watching him implode. They're terrified of what it means for the team, for the season, for the front office. So what do? They stall. They duck questions. They talk about distraction management and respecting the depth chart. They lean on phrases that sound official but say nothing. Because they don't have a plan. They're reacting in real time to pressure from the fans, the media, and now their own owner. And the more they delay, the worse it gets. This isn't just a quarterback decision anymore. It's a franchise-defining moment. Either they embrace the shift, or they let it swallow them. Because one more week of indecision, one more press conference full of non-answers, one more game of sideline shots, showing Sanders standing alone in a helmet with his chin strap undone, it's going to break. The fans know. The media knows. And deep down, the team probably knows too. There's no going back. If they play Sanders against the Patriots and he struggles, they deal with it. They adjust. They learn. That's football. But if they keep delaying and the team starts slipping, they won't just have a quarterback controversy. They'll have an organizational collapse. Because you can't hide from the moment forever. Eventually, it demands an answer. So what now? All eyes are on New England. Every snap Gabriel takes is going to be judged. Every camera cut to Sanders is going to be magnified. And Haslam? He's watching from the suite, already letting the pressure leak through the walls of the locker room. If this game gets messy, Stefanski's job security instantly becomes part of the conversation. If Sanders plays and sparks the team, Stefanski still gets dinged for waiting too long. If Sanders stays on the bench and the team loses, it might be his last delay. There is no clean outcome anymore. The Browns had a window to control this. They could have made the transition smooth, quiet, strategic. Instead, they let fear shape their decisions. And now, they're backed into a corner, playing defense against a quarterback who hasn't even taken the field. It's the most Browns thing ever. Let us know where you stand. Should Sanders start against the Patriots? Is Haslam out of line, or just pulling the trigger on the inevitable? And if you were Stefanski, how would you handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if this Brown saga is the most Cleveland thing you've ever seen. And subscribe if you want more breakdowns of NFL drama that refuses to stay on the field. Because whether they like it or not, the Browns are about to make the biggest quarterback decision of their season. And they're making it under the worst possible conditions. Loud, messy, and way too late. It's wild how a 31-6 victory, a game that should have silenced doubters and boosted morale, ended up pouring gasoline on a fire the Browns swore they had under control. Instead of headlines about defensive dominance or playoff potential, we're now staring down a complete quarterback identity crisis. Why? Because Shedeur Sanders never stepped onto the field. Because Kevin Stefanski stood firm while the crowd screamed. And because Jimmy Haslam reportedly refused to stay quiet any longer. The Browns didn't just win that game. They exposed everything they were trying to avoid. Let's call this what it is, an unraveling. Not because the team is losing. They're not. But because leadership can't get on the same page. The locker room may be holding, but it's fragile. The fans? Past the point of patience. The media? Practically foaming at the mouth for this Patriots game. And through it all, Shedeur Sanders, the backup quarterback with more spotlight than most starters, hasn't thrown a single NFL pass. That's the problem. And it's only getting worse. The Browns are now facing what every modern NFL team fears, a quarterback decision shaped by noise, not performance. The second Haslam stepped into the picture and pressured Stefanski to play Sanders, this stopped being about what's happening on the practice field. It's about optics, leverage, the power balance between coaching and ownership. And at the center of it is a 21-year-old quarterback who hasn't even been given a chance to show what he can do. Here's what's coming. A reckoning. The Patriots game isn't just the next step in the season. It's a collision point. The Browns can't run from this anymore. If they try to repeat the same formula from the Dolphins game, ride Gabriel, ignore the crowd, bench Sanders, it won't be enough. Not now. Not after all this. Because now it's not just the fans chanting for Sanders. Now it's the owner's fingerprints all over the decision. That changes everything. Let's talk about what that really means. When an NFL owner forces a coach to admit, or even hint, that Sanders will play in the next game, that's not a suggestion. That's a directive. And it tells us this team isn't operating on unified football logic. It's operating on survival mode. Haslam wants the headline. Stefanski wants job security. The front office wants peace. And the fans? They just want to know why their most exciting player is still wearing a headset during blowouts. And what about Dillon Gabriel? He's doing what he can. Steady, efficient, but that doesn't cut it when the crowd doesn't believe in you. When the media is already drafting articles about when not if you get benched. He's not the villain in this story, but he's definitely not the protagonist. That role has already been cast, and it's wearing number 2. The Browns wanted to manage the Sanders situation quietly, let him develop, keep the hype on ice, and maybe slot him in mid-season when the moment was right. But that's not how this works. Not when the moment is already here, whether they want it or not. And now, that slow, careful rollout they planned? Gone. Out the window. If Sanders plays in New England, it's not a footnote. It's a national event. It's Dion in the press. It's comparisons to other high-profile QB debuts. It's instant pressure. Every snap will be under a microscope. Every decision Stefanski makes will be questioned, publicly, loudly, relentlessly, because that's the environment they created. They didn't have to let it get this loud. If they'd just given Sanders a few snaps in Miami, just a few, they could have absorbed the pressure, controlled the rollout, managed expectations. But they chose silence. They chose fear. And now they have chaos. That's the irony here. The Browns thought they were avoiding controversy by keeping Sanders on the bench. But in reality, they handed the controversy a megaphone. They built up the tension. They let it stew for weeks. And now that it's ready to blow, they're scrambling to look like they're still in control. But they're not. Jimmy Haslam forcing Stefanski to acknowledge Sanders isn't just a headline. It's a turning point. From this moment on, every football decision is going to be viewed through the lens of ownership interference. That's poison for a locker room. That's fuel for division. And that's how coaching tenures end. If Stefanski plays Sanders and he flops, he'll be blamed for rushing him. If he doesn't play him and the team loses, he'll be blamed for stalling. There's no way out that doesn't involve criticism, and the team knows it. That's what makes this situation feel less like a quarterback battle and more like a full-blown identity crisis. What kind of team do the Browns want to be? The kind that caves to hype? Or the kind that plays it safe until the wheels fall off? Right now, they're stuck between both, and it's tearing them apart. Let's be real. Shedeur Sanders will play. The only question is when, and whether it'll be on their terms or in the middle of a meltdown. That's what this Patriots game represents. The last chance to get ahead of the moment. If the Browns were smart, they'd use it. They'd give Sanders planned snaps. Early. Not just in mop-up duty. They'd take control of the rollout. Show that the coaching staff is still in charge. That the ownership pressure didn't completely bulldoze the process. Because if they wait for another crisis to put him in, that's the end of the conversation. That's when Shedeur goes from being the potential future to being the only option left. And that's when the panic really starts. This team needs to pick a lane. Fast. Because right now, they're trying to play 2 games at once. Protect Gabriel. Protect the locker room. Protect the brand. While also holding on to a quarterback who could electrify the offense and shift the energy of the entire franchise. But you can't do both. You can't claim control while letting ownership call the plays. You can't preach patience while fans chant for change. And you can't say Sanders isn't ready if you've never let him show what he can do. It's a lose-lose, and the Browns walked into it willingly. The next 60 minutes of football will decide the next 10 weeks of headlines. One way or another, Shedeur is coming. The Browns can't pretend otherwise. The only question left is whether they introduce him with purpose or with panic. At this point, there's no more pretending. No more we'll see. No more he's still developing. No more hiding behind the polite, coached-up answers from press conferences that say nothing and mean less. The Browns are officially on clock, and Shedeur Sanders is the countdown. Let's be honest, this was never going to be just about football. Not with this player. Not with this name. Not with this fan base. Not in Cleveland, where quarterback drama is basically a fifth sport. The Browns have managed to turn a straightforward decision, whether to give a backup some snaps in a blowout, into an existential franchise crisis. They didn't just overthink it. They over-controlled it. They tried to stage manage a moment that was already out of their hands the second Shedeur signed the contract. And now, they've backed themselves into a corner. A very loud, very public, very avoidable corner. Here's where things stand. You have a fan base that's already moved on to Shedeur, whether the coaching staff likes it or not. You have national media outlets dissecting the sideline body language of a player who hasn't taken a snap. You have your own owner, Jimmy Haslam, reportedly pressing your head coach to give in to the pressure and put the kid in. This isn't about evaluating talent anymore. It's about managing optics, controlling damage, and making sure the next decision doesn't burn the building down. But here's the catch. It already might have. Because once an owner steps in and makes it known that he wants to play on the field, the entire hierarchy collapses. Coaches lose authority. Players lose clarity. And the fans? They lose faith. If Stefanski puts Shedeur in against the Patriots, everyone will assume he was forced into it. If he doesn't put him in and they lose, everyone will assume he defied Haslam and that his days are numbered. And if he does put Sanders in, but only in garbage time again, that's just going to look like another half measure. More stalling from a coach who's afraid of the inevitable. There are no good choices left. That's the cost of trying to suppress the moment instead of meeting it. And let's not forget, this all started in a game the Browns won by 25 points. That's the most damning part of all of this. It wasn't a loss. It wasn't a mid-season skid. It wasn't a desperate move to shake things up. It was a golden opportunity to do something normal, something low stakes, something smart. They could have given Shedeur a series or 2, let him feel the game speed, let the fans get their wish, let the media write a paragraph and move on. But no, they couldn't even do that. And now, instead of managing the story, they are the story. And what about Shedeur in all of this? He's handled the chaos like a pro. No social media tantrums. No cryptic posts. No passive-aggressive comments in interviews. Just quiet, calculated patience. But let's not confuse composure with indifference. You think he doesn't hear the chants? You think he doesn't know what's being said in the media, in the locker room, in the front office? Of course he does. He's watching the storm build, and he's waiting for his shot. The question is whether the Browns give it to him in a way that sets him up for success, or throw him into the fire because they ran out of other options. Because right now, they're on track for the latter. You can already feel it. If the Patriots come out swinging and Gabriel stumbles, the chants will start early. Every camera will cut to Sanders. Every tweet will call for Stefanski's head. Every moment will tighten the noose. And if Shedeur does go in, that's it. No going back. No just testing things out. No, he's getting some reps. The second he touches the field, the franchise shifts. The fans will treat him as a starter, whether the depth chart says it or not. And the coaching staff will be judged by how he performs, even if they weren't the ones who wanted him in the game in the first place. And that's what makes this so unsustainable. You can't have a quarterback room this divided, not by skill, but by story. Shedeur Sanders isn't just competing for a job. He's carrying the weight of expectations, name value, media buzz, and ownership pressure. That's not a quarterback controversy. That's a branding war. And Cleveland isn't built to handle it. Not like this. Because this franchise has spent years chasing stability, churning through quarterbacks, cycling through coaching staffs, restarting culture every season like it's a New Year's resolution. And now, they have a chance to actually build something. With talent, with promise, with national relevance. And they're fumbling to roll out because they're too scared of the noise. Here's the truth. The noise is never going away. If you're trying to time your decisions based on when the media will calm down, or when the fans will stop chanting, or when the ownership will stop breathing down your neck, then you're already cooked. You make the move because it's time, not when it's convenient. And yeah, Shedeur Sanders might not be ready to take over the whole team, but how would they even know? He hasn't played. He hasn't been tested. They've let fear what could go wrong outweigh what could go right. And if that sounds familiar, it's because it's the Browns. This team has a track record of dragging its feet until decisions get made for them. Quarterback battles that linger too long. Coaches that survive 1 week too many. Roster moves that come 2 games late. It's always reaction over action. And right now, they're doing it again. They're letting the Patriots game, a completely winnable game, become a pressure cooker of their own making. Not because of the opponent, but because of what they refused to do in the weeks leading up to it. They had a clean window to introduce Sanders. They waited. They had a blowout win to get him reps. They passed. They had a chance to get out in front of the story. They hid. And now, they've got a boiling hot storyline, an owner with his hand on the scale, a coach twisting the wind, and a fan base that has already made up its mind. Shedeur isn't a question anymore. He's an expectation. And if the Browns don't meet that expectation soon, and meet it decisively, this team's 31-6 over Miami is going to go down not as a turning point, but as the beginning of the end of the current regime. Let us know what you think in the comments. Should the Browns rip the Band-Aid off and start Shedeur now? Was Stefanski right to hold him back? Or has he already lost the locker room? And how much of this is on Haslam pushing his own agenda into the huddle? Hit like if you've been following every twist of this drama. Subscribe for more breakdowns of the NFL's most chaotic storylines. And share this with someone who swore Cleveland had finally figured out this season. Because, let's be real, if this is the plan, they're not fooling anyone.